Just redoing YouTube because it seemed to be giving me an echo. Is there something?
Okay. So when it opens up that window in like Google Chrome,
Yeah.
you can close that, and that's so. What was happening is the stream was playing on
Doing
your
YouTube
computer, and
because
it
it
runs that
seemed to
with
be
the
giving.
speakers.
Okay.
So you click go live, and then it'll have that bar that goes forward. Once it actually starts going, you can close your browser.
Okay. All right. We're good.
That's all you need to do.
Thanks. Bye. All right. We're back. I think we're good. I think we're on YouTube and I see we're live. So I need to find my attendee list and actually do roll call. But Henry, do you want to officially call the meeting to order? And I think I've got you.
He's muted.
Muted. Yeah. Let me.
There, I did it. This is the May 17th meeting of the Oregon City Transportation Advisory Committee. We are opening a few minutes late because we've had some technical difficulties, and hopefully they've been resolved. If we'd have the roll call now, John?
Right. So we've got several people that aren't on the committee on the meeting, but we're going to go ahead and go with Ben Simons. Ben on. Ben's not on yet. He was going to be on. How about Bruce Fries? There's Bruce.
Present.
Chetamere is not on. Henry.
Here.
Miles is not on. Ray.
Present.
And Tim Morgan is on. I didn't think he was going to make it, but he's in an airport somewhere, I think.
Yes, I'm here.
We've also got staff. Petronella with the chamber. She's our chamber member. And Petronella, I'm trying to remember your last name.
Donovan.
Donovan. So you're not official yet because I don't think the mayor has appointed you, but this is the chamber representative. And if you know Petronella, she comes to a lot of different meetings. I see her face from time to time. And so she's pretty active in the community. And thank you for being here to listen to tonight's meeting.
For having me.
Okay. And then we've got our new administrative assistant, senior administrative assistant, Audrey. And Audrey, I'm wanting to quickly remember last name here. I've already
Meeker.
Meeker. Yes, Audrey Meeker. So she started Monday and we haven't even met face to face. So this is the first time we met. So very good. Let me see. Other than that, we've got Moji on the call. So I'll let him introduce his name or introduce himself so I don't mess up his name. But he's been in the industry for a very long time. And I ran into him at a recent conference and asked him if he would come and talk to us a little bit about traffic safety and some of the observation that he does. So I'm going to let him introduce himself, but I will just say that he's well known in our industry as a technical expert and he's a professor. So with that, Moji, well, Henry, is that what you want to do? You want to kick it over to Moji so I can make sure we
might as well.
Okay.
We have to approve the minutes before we do that. I'm not referring to the minutes.
Say that again, Ray.
Do we need to approve the minutes before we dive into the presentation?
I think we can do that afterwards.
Okay.
But let's not forget. So don't let us forget, Ray.
Okay. Can we get started?
Yes, we can.
All right. Good afternoon. My name is Moji Takalu. I am professor of civil engineering at University of Portland. I have been teaching at University of Portland for the past 37 years, and I am retiring from university at the end of the June. I had privilege of meeting Mr. John Lewis. I came to Oregon City and we went for a road tour. Then he invited me just to give a presentation for your transportation committee. I really appreciate it for the opportunity. And I'm going to start sharing my screen. And after this one, if you have any questions, we can answer at the conclusions of the workshop. The workshop is called Road and Street Safety for Non-Engineers, is sponsored by U.S. Department of Transportation, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and Transportation Safety Division of Oregon Department of Transportation. To look at it, just how important is highway safety, I'd like to give you just what's going on in the United States. In traffic-related issues, every year approximately 36,000 people, they are being killed. 2.7 million people, they have been injured in 2019. We had 4.8 million property damage crashes, for a total reportable crashes of 6.7 million. There are as many reportable crashes than there are as many of those unreported. When we add up all of those, it adds up about between 14 to 15 million crashes per year. In the state of Oregon, on average year, we had, for the past 5 years, we had about 450 to 500 fatalities every year. What it really means, about 1.5 person, he or she is going to be killed in traffic crashes in Oregon every single day. Like in 2019, we had 494 fatalities. We had almost 40,000 injuries, 22,000 property damage crashes, for a total crashes of 50,000. If you also look at the past 5 years history, you can see that the range is about that 454 to 500 per year. That's the number of the fatalities. And our injuries is about close to about 20,000 every year. And our crashes about 50,000 in the state of Oregon. Oregon City. The population of Oregon City in 2020, it was approximately 37,500. In Oregon City, we had 3 persons was killed, 381 people, they were injured in traffic crashes. We had 209 property damage crashes for a total of 485 crashes. Again, what it means, every single day, you have 1.5 crashes in Oregon City. Then you're located in Clackamas County. Clackamas County had 44 fatalities, 4,278 traffic-related injuries, almost 2,600 property damage crashes, for a total crashes of 5,506 in 2019. One thing that I like to tell you the difference, there is a huge difference between crashes or accidents. What does accident means? Accident, it means no fault, it's acts of God. Crashes, it means someone has used poor driving tactics or judgments. Why we are calling these are crashes? If you look at right here, 95% of the crashes start from human error. When we look at this one, 67%, it was at the 100% fault of the human. When we add the human as well as also other factors, that adds up 24% more. And when we look at it, it was human problem, roadway problem, as well as vehicle, that adds up additional 4%. If I add all of these, it comes to be 95% of our problems are related to the human errors. What are the problems? Our problems are with the drivers. They're involved in speed, alcohol, or drugs. Every day is a 911 on our roadway system. And we have seen crashes like this in the state of Oregon. This crash, it happened near Hermiston, Oregon on I-84. You have to see the pictures to believe it. In this crash, 50 cars, they were involved, 7 people, they were killed, 27 people, they were injured. A lot of police emphasis are on what? Violent crime. But there are more people in this country, they are being killed in traffic crashes, and more people, they are being injured in traffic crashes than the violent crime. There is 1 traffic fatalities in the United States every 14 minutes, compared to 1 murder cases every 32 minutes. 1 traffic injury happens every 7.2 seconds, compared to 1 violent crime every 26.2 seconds. 1 property damage crashes happens every 7 seconds, compared to 1 property crime every 4.4 seconds. Does the traffic kills a lot more people and injures a lot more people than the violent crime? My question is being killed in traffic crash is less being dead, or do we have perception problem in this country? When we look at it, just about 1/3 of our fatalities are either alcohol related. The other one, about 30%, they are speed related. These are within human control. These are not really accidents. These are crashes. And it can be controlled. In this country, when we look at 2019, the population of the country, it was 328 million, 36,000 people, they were killed, 2.7 million people, they were injured, 4.8 million crashes, property damage crashes happened for a total of 6.7 million. It cost the country $463 billion. To give you just what are the problems are our pedestrians, motorcyclists, bicyclists. 10,142 of our 36,000 fatalities, they were alcohol related. And 9,478 of those, they were speed related. If I add up these 2 numbers, we can avoid almost close to about every single year, we can avoid almost 20,000 crashes, fatal crashes per year, if we can control alcohol as well as speed in this country. There was a study in this country, and they find that 56% of the drivers, they've been involved in serious injury or fatal crashes, they were impaired under the drugs or alcohol. What happens by tomorrow at this time? By tomorrow at this time, 107 more people, they are going to be killed, 7,506 more people, they are going to be injured, and almost 18,000 more crashes is going to happen within the next 24 hours. Some of you remember those images. That was the darkest day in US history, September 11, 2001. The terrorists, they attacked this country. And we lost 3,030 innocent lives. 1 life is too many, and hopefully it never happens anymore. But since that time in this country, 743,000 people, they were killed in traffic crashes. In this country, 51 million people, they were injured in traffic-related crashes. In this country, we had 120 million crashes, and it cost us $5.4 trillion. About 2 years ago, we had coronavirus. Today, we had 1 million fatalities related to coronavirus. Hopefully, we have passed that problem. But the problem is that traffic-related issue is ongoing problem. And we have to solve this. Some of us, we may not have the feeling about these numbers. Let me tell you how large is 743,000. What I did, this is the map of Oregon, and this is I-5. Here is Portland, Oregon. Here is Sacramento, California, the distance of 580 miles. I assume the average height of the person, he or she was 5'3". I lay down all of these dead bodies on the center line of the I-5. It covered I-5 from Portland, Oregon to Sacramento, California. Can you imagine you drive for 10 hours and you're driving over it, the dead body of the people that they were killed in traffic crashes since that time? About the injuries, when we go around the earth, it's 24,901 miles. I put the injuries around the earth. It covered the entire earth perimeter. I still had to go a quarter farther. About the cost, here is the earth, here is the moon. The distance is 238,900 miles. The length of a $100 bill is 6 inches. I put all of these $100 bill end to end. Every single year, you can reach with the causes of the traffic crash from the earth to the moon. One of the major problems that we are having is distracted drivers, distracted pedestrians. We are using smartphones. We are using technology. It has made the life very easy for us, but it also has created its own problems. When the people they drive, they are being distracted by several items. One of that is texting. The other one is using cell phones, eating and drinking, talking to a passenger, using a navigation system, adjusting a radio, drowsy or fatigue, and concentrating on other things other than driving. And this problem, it becomes to be a pandemic by itself. This bad habit that we are getting about texting, using cell phones, it has been becoming to be like a cancer and is spreading itself over the entire human body at this point. And we have to control it. Economic costs of the motor vehicle crashes. What we did in this case, we add wages and productivity losses, medical expenses, administrative costs, motor vehicle damage, and employee costs. If we can avoid one traffic crash, it costs us $1.4 million, $1.5 million. One injury, it costs us $90,000. One property damage costs us $4,200. These are the actual costs. It doesn't include the pain and suffering. When we add those pain and suffering, a person that he or she is being killed, that value increased substantially. So as the injuries is going to increase substantially. Roadside crashes kills and injures a lot of innocent people. About 65% of the people that are being killed or injured, they are totally innocent. Someone else drink, someone else drive too fast for the condition and kill someone else's loved ones. You also should know that motor vehicle crashes are not accidents. These are predictable and we can prevent it. I gave you the facts. Now, what can we do about these things? What we have to have an agency goals and objectives. The goals of your agency, Oregon City, shall not be reductions of the traffic crash. The goals shall be what? 0 fatalities and 0 disabling injuries. That shall be our goal. We are not going to reach overnight. We establish this goal and we work towards this goal. What is a beautiful road? It is not a road that has a lot of landscaping. It's not a road with a lot of trees on it. A beautiful road is the road with no blood on it. A road with 0 fatalities and 0 disabling injuries. And we have to work on beautifications of the roadways. The people, they come to the state of Oregon for our landscape, for the streams, for the colors. And look at how beautiful is the state of Oregon. They come with all of our beautiful skies and the ocean. And I like to make our roads as beautiful as those pictures that I showed you. And for that reason, let's work together to make our roads beautiful and work on beautifications of the roadway system. How can we do that? To provide maximum safety, what we need commitment. We need communication. We need cooperation among the agencies. The commitment shall start from what? Top management. It shall start from mayor. Shall start from city manager. Shall start from city engineer, from public works department. Shall start from the chief of the police. And then the agencies like public works department shall communicate with law enforcement. But both agencies must work together for a common goal, and that is to educate the traveling public, to educate the pedestrians. So what we really need, we need commitment, communication, and cooperation among what? Among engineers, among enforcement, among educators. Highway safety has 4 E's. We start with engineering. We build the roadways to certain standards. It is 12 feet lane. It has shoulders. It has signs, marking, and etc. Then we design that road for certain speed, 35 miles, 50 miles, 70 miles, or etc. We give that roadway to the enforcement agency. At that point, the road becomes the ownership of the what? Enforcing the law is going to be enforcement agency. But the two agencies, they must work with educators to educate the traveling public. The last resource that we have is emergency response time. If person, he or she is being killed or injured in traffic crash, 50% of them, they die instantly. 35% of them, they die between 1 minute to 30 to 59 minutes. And 15% of them, they die after 1 hour. After 1 hour, within 30 days. What we can do, that emergency response time is so important for those 35% of the people between 1 minute to 59 minutes. For maximum safety, first of all, we must recognize our dinosaurs. What are the problems? Are these what? Young drivers? Are these senior drivers? Are these distracted drivers? Speedy drivers? Alcohol, drugs, or what? So we start with engineering, but we also have to look at those dinosaurs or those people that are causing problem. Those are young and senior drivers. Younger drivers, they have what? A good perception reaction time, but they don't have good judgment. Senior drivers, they do have good judgment, but they don't have good perception reaction time. We do have speedy drivers. You saw it, 9,500 people, they died because they were speeding or they were causing crashes related to the speeding. Impaired drivers, it was 10,500 people, they were what? Impaired. Those are crashes, fatal crashes. Pedestrian safety, about 6,200 people, they are being killed as these are pedestrian. And that has been increasing since 1991. Bicyclists, we have to educate them. So as motorcyclists, my other major problems right now is distracted and aggressive driving. For that reason, I am saying that engineering and enforcement, they must work together. And they must work together, and they must focus on changing driver and road users' behavior. The enforcement must be frequent. Enforcement change behavior up to 6 weeks. When someone, they see flasher that the enforcement patrol cars is flashing, they remember it for 6 weeks. After 6 weeks, the behavior goes back to the original condition. So enforcement change behavior for up to 6 weeks. Behavior will return without additional enforcement. And engineering and education needed to provide permanent solution. Education is very important. We must work with educators to educate the younger generations of the America. Emergency medical services is very important. Your committee, you are going to get requests for speed humps. Your committee is going to get requests for what? Roundabout. Your committee is going to get requests for traffic circle, for speed tables. But if I put that speed hump, it may increase emergency response time. We don't put any of those traffic calming devices on the emergency routes. Every device that it goes on the roadway must comply with the Bible of the traffic engineer. That Bible is called Manual on Uniform Traffic Control Devices. What it does, it regulates the traffic, it warns the traffic, it guides the traffic. The current edition that we are using is 2009 edition. And what they are signs. They regulate the signage, markings, signals, everything it goes on the roadway. We have to review this manual and see if it warrants. If it meets the warrants, then we go ahead and put those devices on the roadway system. Traffic control devices are used to regulate the traffic, warn or guide the traffic. And we are using for safe and orderly movement of the traffic. You're going to get requests to put a multi-way stop sign. The neighbors, they love those devices. But I like that to caution you about the use of those. The stop sign shall not be used as a traffic calming. It doesn't calm the traffic. It must be based on engineering studies. We put a stop sign or traffic signal if we had 5 or more reportable crashes in 12 months period that can be corrected by multi-way stop sign or traffic signal. For multi-way stop sign, we also have to have adequate volume, and that volume is going to be 300 per hour for any 8 hours of an average day. So we just don't, although that we are going to listen to our neighbors, but the engineers must evaluate it. And if it meets the warrants or the requirements, then we go ahead and put that stop sign or traffic signal or multi-way stop sign. One of the devices that we have been using excuse me, lately is rectangular rapid flashing beacon. How good they are. They are wonderful devices. We also have been using this sign that it catch your speed. It flashes. It is a good device for changing the behavior. Then we also have traffic signals. As I said, we put traffic signals if it meets the warrants. Trees. Trees is another issue. In Oregon, we love trees. Yes, I am a tree lover myself. But when it comes to the question or decision that I have to make a decision to save a life versus a tree, I will cut the tree. The picture that I show you right here, you see that the tree has been hit. There is a good indication another person may hit. In this case, this tree shall come down, no matter how important is that tree. Trees, they are environmentally important, is politically important, but human's life is a lot more important. We want to give the gift of life to someone's loved ones. And you can see it that what has happened. A tree planted on front of the stop sign, that's a no-no. Look at the mailboxes that the people, they have been planting on the public right-of-way. These mailboxes can be a killer. It can kill someone's loved one. So as this one, it can be a killer. So as this one. Sometimes we care about the beauty. And we think that the road should be beautiful. But we define it, a beautiful road is the road which does not have any blood on it. Look at this one. The landscape architect, he took the control. And they put all of these, although it looks so pretty. But look at the blind person. Look at the way that we are walking these days. We are not looking anymore. We look at on our smartphones. This is a trip hazard, and we shall not do this. So as this one, it can be a trip hazard. Traffic calming. What's traffic calming? We want to make what? The streets are made for the people to what? To raise family. It's made for transit. It's made for bicyclists. It's made for pedestrians. A street is not just for the cars. It's for multi-users. For that reason, we must make our streets somehow that the people, they will be comfortable to walk. So for traffic calming, what we want to improve neighborhood livability. We want to enhance safety for residents and street users. And we want to support a multimodal transportation system. What do we use? We use speed humps. Does it work? Yes, there has been a study by City of Portland. When we are using a series of the 3 of these, it reduced the speed in residential area by 5 to 7 miles per hour. It also reduced the volume of the traffic by about 20%. Because arterial traffic is not going to use local streets anymore. It's good, but please be careful if it's leading to an emergency medical center, it's leading to fire department. We don't want to install these devices. What we have right here is speed cushion. We opened this area just for emergency vehicles. That solve that problems that we do have with emergency response time. Pedestrian fatalities in this country has been increasing since 2012. That was the time that we start using cell phones in this country. At that time, we had about 4,000 pedestrian fatalities. Today, we are talking about 6,200 fatalities in 2019. It was the same in 2020 and 2021. And it has been fluctuating between that range for the past 3 years. A pedestrian is being killed almost every 1.4 hours. 48% of pedestrian fatalities are related either to drivers or pedestrian, they have been impaired. 48%. Our focus has been what? On the intersections. But pedestrian fatalities mostly happens away from the intersection. 82% of the pedestrian fatalities happens away from the intersections. and only 18% happens at the intersections. We adopted the 20 miles per hour around the school areas. What's the reason? Because if someone is being hit at 20 miles per hour, fatalities is going to be 5%, injury, he or she is going to be injured 65%, and no injuries is 30%. At 30 miles per hour, the fatalities is going to increase to 45%, injuries 50%, no injuries is 5%. And our law enforcement officers, they must focus on enforcement of that 20 miles per hour around the school areas. In Oregon, we are having a major problems with pedestrian fatalities. 2019, we had 85 pedestrian fatalities, 953 pedestrian injuries, which was 17.1% of our fatalities. How does it happen? The majority of our pedestrian fatalities happens, the people, they just dart in, they are looking at their smartphone, you're not paying attention, and they think that the car should see them. Obviously, sometimes the driver can be distracted as well. That's the majority of our pedestrian fatalities. On multi-lane, this vehicle stops, but this vehicle does not stop, then we do have fatalities or injuries. The people, they walk with dark clothing at night. How can I improve that one? It is not just only engineering issue, it's engineering, enforcement, and education. All three of them, all those three groups, they must work together to solve pedestrian fatalities. You're going to get a lot of requests for crosswalks marking. Not necessarily crosswalk marking, putting those white lines is going to improve safety of the pedestrians. First of all, it must be at the proper location. We must have high visibility pavement marking. We must have good illumination. If you don't have a good illumination, don't use it. We must have adequate signing. If it's at mid-block, we must have advanced stop bar. Again, tools, if it's going to be from curve to curve, it's going to be a very long distance to cross. We want to use a raised medium. And to slow down the traffic, we use at the curve, we use curve extension, which we call it ball valves. And then we also use signals. We can mark like this, or we can mark it like this or like this. The marking, this is a lot more visible than this one right here. And that's why we are using this longitudinal lines for what? For school areas. And sometimes you're using architectural stone, stamped concrete, or color textures pavement. I still like to see the white lines, see how much it makes difference when you put those white lines. Illumination is the key factor. Especially at mid-blocks, do not use crosswalks at the mid-block if you don't have a good illumination. There was a study by a gentleman that he's one of the top, the most knowledgeable, one of the very knowledgeable person for pedestrian safety. His name is Mr. Charlie Zigier. What he did a study at 2,000 locations. 1,000 of those, it was marked with the crosswalks. 1,000 of those, it was unmarked. His conclusion was that there were more crashes at the marked crosswalk compared to unmarked at the mid-blocks. Why? It was because sometimes you're getting the false sense of security to what? Pedestrians. When you ask the public, they like those crosswalks. When we ask traffic engineers, they're very careful where they put it. And if we put everywhere, it loses its effectiveness. So we We put those crosswalks at the location which is really needed. One of the devices that we like to use is rectangular rapid flashing beacon. How good they are? Rectangular rapid flashing beacon is reduced the crashes by 47%. Rectangular rapid flashing beacon can increase motorist yielding rate to 98%. Rectangular rapid flashing beacon usually is effective when the speed is 35 miles per hour or less. This is a study which was done by Federal Highway Administration, and it's recent study, 2021. We use this device again around the school areas at the mid blocks when there are going to be crossings, and it has been a wonderful device. They are expensive. Each of those posts may cost you about $12,000 to $15,000 to $20,000. You do have problems in the speed everywhere that we go. In Oregon, we do have that problem. These are speed-related crashes. In Oregon, in 2018, we had 502 fatalities. 146 of those they were speed-related, which was 29%. 142 of those they were alcohol and drug-related. What shall we do to solve our problems? We must have a high-profile public information campaign against speeding. We must ask enforcement, and enforcement must be visible and frequent. We don't want that our enforcement officers, they hide themselves. We like that they show themselves. I like to see those black and white cars. I like to see those lights to be flashing. When the light is flashing, it brings a lot of motorists to the compliances, and the people, they remember those lights for 6 weeks. Enforcement, plan enforcement at varying time and locations. We don't want that you will be invited guests. Traditional enforcement is the best. Automated enforcement, we use it to enhance the limited resources that the police has. Neighborhood speed watch, this is another tool that we can use. What we do have those speed display reader board. Those of us that we have bad habits, when we see that it picks up our speed and it says that 35 miles per hour, oh my God, the speed's supposed to be 25 miles per hour. A lot of us, it is a good reminder, and then it changes our behavior. Then we do have a neighborhood speed watch that we can get a laser gun, borrow it to the neighbors, they monitor the speed, they get the license plate of the people that they were speeding, they send it to the police department, they issue warnings. That has been practiced. As I mentioned, I like to see black and white cars. I like to see headlights. I like that the police officers to be visible. In Oregon City, perhaps you have about 40 police officers. Population of 37,500. I like to demonstrate it that there are 37,500 police officers in Oregon City. That's what we like, that police officers to be visible. Law enforcement officers must focus on changing driver behavior during traffic stops. And we think that reader board, it can modify a lot of people's behavior. What I did, I went to a road tour with the various public works department. We came to Oregon City, we went to Westland, all of the city of Happy Valley, city of Beaverton, and etc. We look at some of the problems. I put those problems into a safety, in a book, it's called Safety Handbooks for Oregon's Local Roads and Streets. We wrote this book for Public Works Department, for law enforcement, for traffic safety committee members. You can, the book has 23 chapters. You can download it free of charge at www.up.edu/highway safety. If you do have questions about traffic calming, there is a chapter on traffic calming. If you do have problems or questions about pedestrian safety, there is a chapter on pedestrian safety. You do have questions about traffic control devices, there is a chapter on traffic control devices, and etc. I would like to thank you for being such a wonderful audience and for your commitment for traffic safety. And these are my contact information. Thank you to Mr. John Lewis for the invitation. And thank you to your entire traffic committee that you were here tonight. I really appreciate it for all of your commitment. And with your help, we can solve these problems that we are having. Thank you. I'm going to stop sharing and answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Moji. I appreciate you being here. And I've got Henry, I took you off, or you took yourself off of mute. Just, I don't know if you wanted to offer anything else. I think it was an interesting message. I've heard some of it before. Every time I hear it, I learn something new. And, you know, it's a lot of it's so makes so much common sense. We see it all the time, and it's more a matter of how do we respond to it. So I know in Moji and my drive-through, there was definitely several locations where we had site obstructions to signage and you know, signage that really needed to be updated. It didn't have the right reflectivity. So it's kind of interesting driving around with them. You feel like you're on top of your game, and then just take a drive with Moji and he'll tell you how your traffic systems need to be tuned up. So I appreciate him coming to the city and watching, and I appreciate him speaking to us tonight. He kept it in under an hour. So thank you for that, Moji.
Sure, John, as I mentioned, although that I am retiring, but that does not mean that you cannot contact me. I'm still going to keep my email, my phone. You're welcome to contact me anytime, or any of your members. If they have any questions, you're more than welcome to contact me. I really appreciate it. And most likely I will continue some of our workshops next year as well. And hopefully the next workshop, we can do it in person.
I think Ray has a question he'd like to ask.
Yes, please.
I'm curious about I see the 4 E's of traffic safety does not include equity. And so I'm curious about if there's a reason why equity is not included in 4 E's.
Why, you're asking why in the 4 E's, it is not really balanced, right? That's the question.
But why equity, like equity analysis and equity concerns, why that is not one of the 4 or 5th E is not equity. So that's because I was thinking about equity concerns with like enforcement, and there's a lot of overlap with equity needs for a lot of things you're talking about. So I was curious about if you thought about equity concerns with the presentation. Thank you.
Sure, definitely all of us, we must have a share. And that equity is very important. To balance that equity is so important. Like right now, because of the limited resources that the police department they have, enforcement of the traffic, it is not on the top priority. And we are losing traffic teams with the police department. And unfortunately, the other people that are responsible for this is not just engineering, enforcement, or education. It is the parents of our younger generations of America. When I look at it, for example, a child, he's being born. We teach them to walk, to talk. We send them to school. At the beginning of their career is what? They're a goldfish in the traffic stream. We give them a driver's license at the age of 16. Then what? the child, if he or she create bad habits at that age, it's not the age of 16, full license at the age of 17. If that child at that age get bad habits of driving too fast, distracted, under influence, and so on, and if he or she is not being reminded by law enforcement agency, that goldfish becomes to be a bigger fish, and eventually he or she becomes to be a shark. We cannot change or modify the shark's behavior. So is the parent's responsibility is going to be what? The educator's responsibility, is the law enforcement responsibility, it is the engineer's responsibility. All of us, we have to have that equity. And there must be more balance between enforcement as well as engineering department. John, can I ask you, how good relationship do you have between your enforcement?
Between Oregon City Police, which John are you talking to me, or are you talking to John? I guess you didn't know John Fetzer. He's on our police department, so we asked them to attend. So we do have, I would say, good relations with our police department, but we probably don't interface and we don't talk about traffic as much as we could or should.
Okay, what's the focus of your transportation committee? Your transportation committee, do they listen to the public, everything, or do they listen to the request, they evaluate it, and then it comes to the public works department? That's the way that you operate, or?
Well, we don't have a lot of issues that come to this committee, but when they do, yes, they definitely listen to this committee. And this committee is more of a sounding board for their own neighborhoods and the groups that they interact with. And then, we go through various issues, but we're not, we meet monthly, up to probably 10 times a year. So obviously, we would talk more about programs, transportation system plan updates, land use files, those kind of things, more than a lot of the things we've heard about tonight. But I think most of the folks that got involved in this program started off with a high interest in wanting to resolve local traffic safety concerns.
Sure. All right, that partnership is so important because, the citizens, they see the problems. They know the problems. So this committee, they are going to be what? The spokesmen for the entire 37,500 population. They evaluate those problems. As I mentioned, sometimes we get too emotional. We get too emotional about the request. I had to, for example, some traffic fatalities that it happens, parents, they come and, they request, Moji, we need 4-way stop sign. And I had to reject a case on this that was involved in fatality. Sometimes, that the best decision may not be the most popular decision, but we have to make that professional decision. Again, some of these cases get extremely emotional. And I hope that your transportation committee, although that you're going to listen to the neighbors, but the ultimate decision must be based on engineering study and application of engineering judgments. If we don't need that device, don't put it. It causes more problems than solving the problems. Sure.
All right, thank you, Moji.
Thank you.
Anything else, Henry?
I think that does it. I don't see anybody else with a question, and I thank you for the presentation and reminding us of some of our things that we should be doing.
I appreciate it for the invitation. Thank you so much.
And now, John, if we can move on with the rest of the meeting and start with our minutes and the agenda, at the top of the agenda?
Yeah, let me, am I sharing my screen right now?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll follow Ray's suggestion and get back to the approval of the minutes. So minutes, I don't, from the April 19th meeting, I didn't sit through that meeting, and I didn't spend too much time looking at that, but are we in agreement that the minutes as published should be, we get a motion to approve?
And it was a very short meeting, so there was not a lot of content.
Okay.
So is there any changes anybody wants to make to the minutes?
I think my changes.
No, I
are
don't think so.
I think my changes already been included in the updated minutes. So I think I'm good. I can make a motion to approve.
Your second?
Aye. Tim?
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Mhm.
Minutes are approved.
Okay, thank you for that.
And are there any public comments? I'll assume our agenda's been adopted.
Yeah, I'm gonna go through that. I don't know of any public comments or see anybody that's raised their hand. I think Dana Webb is on, so we should probably move into the Public Works report. I think she worked on most of that for us. It's showing up here. She wanted to give a status on Holcomb Boulevard safe routes to school and the Malala Avenue. There was some follow-up evidently that came up during one of our last meetings. So she was going to talk through that as well as talk about some survey results and talk about ADA ramps. So Dana, can you hear me, and are you at your computer?
Can you enable screen sharing for me?
Try. I'm trying to remember how to do that. Just a second here.
While you're doing that, I think I will say welcome to our new commission member from the city, the Commerce Committee people. And as she's probably picked up, this is sort of a less formal arrangement of things than what it could be. So with that, I want to turn it back over to Dana because she's ready.
Sorry, I'm trying to get my screen share so I can only see some of you. So if you have questions, feel free to interrupt. And you guys can all see my PowerPoint.
Yes.
Yes.
So first I was going to start with just a short update on the Holcomb Boulevard Safe Routes to School project. About 2 years ago, we applied for a grant along this corridor. We did not make the funding cut, so the program is back this year. And I've been following closely the status of the Sears Farm subdivision up off of Holcomb, and they are in for plan review. Their plans would include frontage improvements along this green line here, the solid green line that is 7-foot sidewalk, 6-foot bike lane, 8-foot planter strip, and street lighting, as well as at this Green Star and RRFB. So the project would install those. So the grant would look at filling in the missing sidewalk here between Winston and the Sears Farm subdivision. Would include the 4th RRFB for the Holcomb Boulevard corridor here at Winston. A small section of sidewalk on the south side of Holcomb between Oak Tree Terrace and that new proposed RRFB, and then sidewalks on the north side of Holcomb up to the elementary school. So this is kind of where we're headed. We're still refining our cost estimates, understanding our right-of-way impacts, to confirm that we can include all of these improvements within the maximum grant request. But when I watched April's meeting, I felt like there was a little bit of a question about what the status of Holcomb Boulevard was. So this is my short update. My intention was to come back next month requesting a letter of support, and I can still come back next month if that's the preference, or if the committee supports a project generally, as I just described, then I could prepare a letter of support for the chair.
At this point, would there be any major changes in the next month or that would make it better to wait?
Really, the refinement will be kind of, what are construction costs looking like? Really understanding those right-of-way impacts. If we cut something, it'd probably be this small piece on this side of the road. But that's really such a small piece that I'm not sure that's going to save us a lot. So it's up to you. I already have a letter of support from Holcomb Elementary, and then last night, Park Place Neighborhood Association with this same visual agreed to provide a letter of support.
In my humble opinion, it would be probably easier for you if we were to do a letter of support tonight, or at least authorize it tonight, and then allow you to meet your deadline for submitting the request a little easier.
And what did you say this letter is for? Is a grant application? Is that what it's for?
Yes, a construction grant. So I can request up to $2 million with a city match. So I'm working through how we fund that city match component and then the cost of these improvements.
Hey, Dana, with the public discussion going on the planning commission on the project with the 478 homes, would there be any development fees from the contractor, the Icon Development, that would be able to contribute part of that in there?
I don't know the timing of when those homes would be built, but the SDCs are paid at that time. So I'm not sure that the Park Place development would be far enough along, but possibly the Sears Farm.
When's the Sears Farm planning on construction? Have they announced that yet?
I'm not sure. I believe we're on the first plan review. And depending on a project, sometimes it takes 2 or 3, maybe even 4 to get all of those details worked out.
Yeah, there's meeting next Monday on that second phase of public comment. It was quite interesting. I was in attendance last week, and I don't know if they're going to get their 487 homes or whatever the number is they want to put in there, because they're trying to put them on 1,800-foot lots. So there's a lot of concern about where the access road will come off of Holcomb or off of Redlands Road there. So anyway, might check with our former colleague Bob LaSalle to give you some probably insight on where he's seeing on that. Maybe if, that's probably going to be down the road. If you can get the money now to do this, I think that's the best plan. And if the developer is going to be for Sears Farm is going to finish that piece up, that's going to save a lot of funds, for the other parts that you can fill in. Are you guys hearing me okay? Because I'm not sure. I've been up for 15 hours. I started at 3 a.m. this morning. I'm here in New York right now. So I feel like I'm just like fading.
Tim, I hear you just fine. And I think I hear what you're saying as well, which is, trying to get development to pay its fair share. And I think that's there's the development fees. That's why our development fees are as high as they are. It's a little harder to justify. In some cases, it's not too hard, but other cases it's harder to justify a sidewalk extension offsite that doesn't serve immediately serve that development. But in this case, the Sears Farm subdivision definitely does that. We've conditioned the rapid flashing beacon, and with the idea that some of these other sidewalk improvements could be grant funded, assuming we can win the grant. That's always the challenge, is winning the grant. So
Right.
that letter of support is pretty key. And then, I think the other piece is it's associated with the elementary school. And Dana, I can't remember, are we still meeting the requirements for Title I school at Holcomb?
Yeah, they may not call it that because they aren't doing the low income lunch program, but they do have a metric that is being used to compare projects. So we've completed part 1 of the grant application, and we've gotten our preliminary score back, and our preliminary score looks very good. So we are continuing on to part 2. So I'm refining, that application, refining the exact components that are included in the project and the exact limits. And so really for part 1, it's very metric focused, the school's percentage of low income students, the speed of the roadway, the width of the roadway. It's very much, it's either, you get the points or you don't get the points. It's not subjective at all. This part 2 becomes a little more subjective. Support from, the school, the neighborhood, elected bodies all play into that kind of second part of the grant application.
Dana, a thought that just came to me on our letter of support, would it be reasonable or possible to include a short paragraph about how this would contribute to the safe path to school bit that we're trying to work on?
Yes, I think we can do that.
Thank you.
So I don't know that we need a motion or a second. I think what I heard was if Dana prepares that letter, we get it in front of Henry for authorization, the committee's okay with that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, let's move forward with that then, Dana.
Okay. Next topic, there was a request for kind of a summary of the Malala Avenue survey. And I'll be honest, we just got these results and I've only spent just a very little bit of time. That's where I've got draft up there. And part of that was we had a little issue with our survey results. Apparently we had some kind of a spam bot fill out our survey. So we had to do a little cleanup of the data. So we ended up with 183 what we believe were true or real responses to the survey. And so kind of just a high level summary, 55% of the respondents feel safer walking or using a mobility device now. 53% feel safer getting around by car. 55% find it easier to access the businesses. And then 67% believe the area feels more welcoming and user-friendly. And then we had a question where we asked if you utilize TriMet service, and of the people who answered yes, 55% feel safer or more, feel safer or more comfortable waiting for the bus now, and 64% believe the bus stop locations are an improvement. So just a little bit of kind of the metrics on those responses. And then some of the key themes that we heard. So we had an open-ended question at the very end where folks could provide their feedback. We did get a decent amount of positive feedback. So we do feel that most people appreciated the project. I think we did hear lots of comments about the length of the project. It was an 18-month construction period, which is a pretty long project for Oregon City. But it was within the 18 months that we stated from the start. So that's just a long time to deal with construction. There were a lot of comments about the lack of undergrounding the utilities. So the corridor is approximately a mile long. Our cost estimate for undergrounding would have been over $1 million. And we would have only been able to underground the distribution lines and the communication lines. So those higher transmission lines that you see at the way top of the poles would still have been on poles. So we wouldn't have been able to eliminate all of the poles, and we would have had to identify project components to cut to fund that $1 million in undergrounding cost. So
Dana,
yes.
on the underground utilities, did anybody give any thought to the cost to each property owner to reinstall their drop to the house or the building? As I understand it, from discussions I've had on this subject, there's quite a lot of expense to each property to connect up to the underground, to make the transition from overhead to underground.
We had a little bit of those discussions, especially, kind of looking at how that would happen. A lot of times that even includes rewiring inside of the building to accommodate the power coming underground now instead of overhead. And in some of those cases, had we underground, there was still a likelihood that you'd still need a pole to come back up to have the service drop be overhead, where you had a situation where you couldn't, rewire the electrical service into the building. So it's definitely a big component of the project. And oftentimes, if you're going to do an undergrounding phase, you'll do an early undergrounding phase before you hire your contractor. Otherwise, you're running into your contractor and PGE kind of overlapping each other. And a lot of the times you'll actually do it as a phase where the contractor runs all the conduits, and then PGE will just come back and pull their wires.
Thank you.
Yep. Maintenance. There were a lot of comments to maintain the landscaping along the corridor. For the most part, the street trees along this corridor are something the city would keep an eye on as one of the major arterials. And then there was minimal landscaping installed that would be publicly maintained. So there's the small median in front of Joanne's and Burgerville that has landscaping because there's no pedestrian crossing. But the rest of the medians and the mid-block pedestrian crossings were all done in a concrete and a rocked look to minimize those sight distance issues of blocking a pedestrian with landscaping. We actually got quite a few comments about why didn't we landscape those, especially that larger one up by Black Rock, thinking that was a missed opportunity to provide landscaping. But it was an intentional move to limit sight distance issues for pedestrians crossing the roadway. As you guys mentioned at your meeting last month about the bus stop locations, we heard a lot of feedback from the community in general about those. Although when we did spend a little bit of time kind of looking through some of the comments, those that identified as TriMet riders found the stop locations an improvement. Those who did not identify as a TriMet rider found the stop locations as not a good choice or not their preferred choice. And so I have a slide later where I'll talk a little bit more about bus stop locations. And then we got some comments about timing of the new traffic signals and just general concerns about the change in lane usage at Beaver Creek and Malala Avenue. So a lot of the comments were asking for additional signage on lane usage. And so we'll be looking at that. I know we've got lane usage signs on the traffic signals at both Warner Milne and Colton Place, or kind of near the McDonald's by Safeway. But again, they're not on the actual signal at Malala and Beaver Creek. That intersection is just too many things going on to have a lane usage sign there. And so I think people are getting all the way up there and not kind of knowing which lane to be in. There is also a sign off to the right that explains the lane usage. Unfortunately, it's it's a really big sign, and I think there's a little bit of a tree blocking the sign issue, just because the sign is so large to show how to use each of the lanes. So that's one of the things that I was going to ask a few folks that weren't involved in the project to kind of do kind of almost a third-party review and confirm if they feel the signage is adequate as well. So that's kind of the general summary of the project feedback. Is there any questions?
Any feedback on the buffered bike lanes? Maybe I'm the only one who bikes through the corridor. But I'm just curious if anyone else likes it or doesn't like it or what with the bike lanes.
I haven't made it through all the open-ended responses, but there are other people that bike. I've seen them biking. There was actually a person on a scooter today, an electric scooter using the bike lane.
Yeah, I was
So-
definitely gonna acknowledge that too. Ray, you're not the only one. I've seen you out there, but you're not the only one. Now that we're up there, you know, I get out, you know, more on that section of roadway, and there's definitely a lot more usage of bicyclists than ever before.
All right. So I wanted to talk just a little bit about kind of bus stop locations and the discussions that we did have with TriMet. I know it sounds like there was some concerns that maybe we didn't do enough coordination with TriMet for the bus stop locations. So this is sort of my bus stop 101 class. TriMet and transit agencies use terminology near side, mid block, and far side. And so in this case, so I'll talk about this from the perspective of Malala at Gaffney. So before the project, we had a near side bus that stopped in front of it's a US Bank there, and this would be Gaffney. And as part of the discussions with TriMet during the project, we wanted to move this stop to a far side stop. So in that case, the bus goes through the intersection and you place the bus stop far enough that the bus is clear of the intersection. So this is kind of one of the things that we discussed with them, and this was a little bit of a tough one, but this is one that they really wanted to move far side. So when we look at this, the benefits of the far side crossing is it allows the pedestrian movement to occur behind the bus. So when it was here in front of the bank, the pedestrian would get off. There may be a green light here. And so then the bus is kind of stopping for that green light. The pedestrian gets off. And at that point, then the pedestrian is attempting to cross in front of the bus when it's their turn. And so by moving it to a far side, then the bus isn't held up by the pedestrian in any way. So, and that plays in a little bit more in a mid-block crossing situation. You're always going to want to encourage the pedestrian movement to be behind the bus, especially if it's in a situation where a car could go around the bus and pass. So really looking at each of these stops from a pedestrian, user safety perspective, and then also looking at it from an operations of the transit provider. So switching to a far side bus stop supports a future transit signal prioritization. So in the event we decided to implement a system on the signals on Malala that would identify the bus coming and turn the signals green so that the buses can get through more efficiently, that works best with a far side stop. I mentioned the double stop with both the bus stopping and then hitting a red light as well. The far side stop minimizes the conflicts with the right turning vehicles going around the bus. So in this case, if the bus is stopped here and maybe that left turn pocket is open, there are cars that would go around the bus and try and then make that right turn in front of the bus or go around the bus. Any kind of situation like that puts, more people at risk, pedestrians, maybe that person got off the bus and is trying to cross here and that car comes around. So really just looking to eliminate any potential conflicts. And then the other one that becomes a little bit of an issue here is if this bus were stopped and you have the opposing left turn, so if this would be Malala into Fred Meyer, if they have a flashing yellow and the bus is stopped, then that driver here with the flashing yellow has to make that choice if it's a safe movement to make, not knowing if a car might come around the bus or the bus may start proceeding forward. So it removes those conflicts that would happen because the bus would be here and the left turn could occur with a flashing yellow arrow. And then in the case of the far side, it still allows the right turn movements to happen in that situation. So none of these are perfect, but from a transit operations, most transit providers are always going to select a far side stop.
Dana, this may be you or John, but could you, in a couple of sentences, tell us whether the city has any authority to direct TriMet as to where the bus stops should be on an intersection?
We work pretty closely with TriMet. When they ran the new line down Myers Road, we worked together with them. In a situation like that on Myers Road, they're trying to identify a location where they can fit in a bus stop where people can load and unload from both the front and the rear doors without removing trees. Ideally, in this case, we had a little bit of a blank slate, so we were able to kind of coordinate those locations and plant the trees appropriately. I guess I'm not 100% sure if we would have authority to tell them no. I guess I'm not sure that I have enough knowledge about transit stops to feel comfortable telling the transit agency no, unless there was a safety issue.
Thank you.
Hey, Dana.
I see Bruce has got his hand up, Henry.
Well, it's been my recollection is that TriMet pretty much puts the bus stops where they want them and then takes the city's objections or congratulations in stride and evaluates each one independently.
I guess Henry, Bruce has got his hand up, but I would say that TriMet, the TriMet model of today is definitely work with the agency. They know that we've got a lot of pull when it comes to routes, and especially in Oregon City, where we've tried to work with them through some of our downtown areas that are pretty problematic. They're always trying to, they're a team player for the most part. So, but they do have a lot of justification for some of their recommendations. So we usually listen to that and make a decision accordingly.
Bruce.
All right, thanks everyone. So I just had a question on that. I understand why they moved the bus stop to where they moved the bus stop. That part makes sense in theory. What I don't understand why there isn't a cutout for the bus to pull out safely and protect those passengers, similar to like we have one block up where the Goodwill used to be. I've seen multiple accidents. A great example is actually tonight, right as our meeting was starting, there was a 3-car accident right there blocking the bus in, and the bus was now going to be stopped because of the 3 cars that suddenly hit the brakes as the bus pulled over to get those passengers. So I feel like we're putting our bus passengers at risk, along with plugging up that intersection greatly. And it's happened daily. Like I said, this is a second or third accident that I've seen since this change has been made. So I don't know how we look at that or evaluate that, and what the thought was why we didn't look at trying to do a cutout in that area to make it safer for everyone.
That perfectly
right here.
leads to my next slide, which is
All right, I didn't wait long enough. Thank you.
No, that's fine. So it's sort of this discussion of in lane versus pullouts. So TriMet's preferred option for most situations is an in-lane stop. So the benefits of an in-lane stop is it eliminates their time delay that they experience as they try to re-enter the travel lane. Surprisingly, or maybe not surprisingly, most vehicles are not interested in letting the TriMet bus in front of them. And so, you know, the delays they experience from having to kind of push their way back into traffic start to really impact their on time and their schedule. Ideally, an in-lane stop also benefits both the vehicle by not having to brake and turn, but it also benefits our pavement as the bus is not, you know, coming to a stop with its wheels turning on the pavement. We definitely see more wear and tear on the pavement at bus stops because of the weight and the heat of the bus. Another reason for an in-lane stop is although the bus would pull over into the bike lane, they are not crossing the bike lane. And so Ray might be able to provide a little insight, but as a bike rider, the in-lane stop would still allow the bike to utilize the travel lane to go around the bus. But when they're pulling all the way across the bike lane and then back across the bike lane, it just creates another conflict point. And then the bus pullouts require additional right-of-way and a cost. So that's additional pavement that the bus, you know, for that bus pullout, additional right-of-way impacts to the area. The pullout there at Claremont was existing. We actually had a discussion about taking it out. And that would have been TriMet's preference because it's difficult for them to get back into traffic in that location. Because the project was not doing improvements in that area, we opted to leave the pullout. They do also experience a high ramp deployment at that stop. And so having the pullout, you know, gives traffic an opportunity to get around them. So that's why we have the pullout that exists, but no new pullouts. So they do occasionally prefer a pullout on roadways where the vehicle speeds are over 40 miles per hour, where there's more than 5 bus stops per hour. So for us, we have 2 per hour on Molalla for the frequent service that comes every 30 minutes, or where they see more than 30 boardings per hour. So more than 30 people getting on the bus per hour, because at that point, the delay for the time for people to board becomes enough that it starts to impact your flow of traffic. So those are some of the reasons why we go with an in-lane stop versus a pullout.
Tim,
Yes, my question is when you're going back to that that one stop there, for example, if you can bring that screen back, the far side, which if you look at the Fred Meyer, the problem is the bus totally messes up the light for people turning right to go northbound. And my suggestion is, first, I know you just explained about the pullouts, the advantages and disadvantages of it. But the problem is where they have that, it's right there on the corner, and then it totally blocks all the traffic trying to proceed north, and you can't get around the bus. And then it also messes up the traffic light from people coming out of Fred Meyer. So now it's backing up to Starbucks in there at times. And either if they are allowed to use far-sighted pullouts, then we should make a requirement that in high traffic areas of traffic intersections that you have to have a turnout. If you do put one of those and it's a low traffic, then that's one thing. But the whole idea is to keep traffic moving. And the problem is when they stop in the lane, they impede all the traffic and everybody has to wait for them to pay their fare or check in. Or if they have to drop the ramp for the wheelchair to get in, then that gets people impatient. And then what happens, people do stupid things trying to drive around a bus when there's really not enough adequate asphalt to do it. So my point is, there's two sides of the problem, and we have to weigh what TriMet wants and what safety and traffic flow needs. So I don't know how, if we have to make some kind of a mandate that if you want those far sides, you can't do them on high corner traffics unless you have a turnout, and kind of go from there. Otherwise, they need to make the people walk a little bit farther to a safer spot, so that traffic flow can move, and the passengers can get in safely also. So anyway, that's my point. Hopefully that makes sense.
It did to me. So moving on to the next item, Dana, please.
All right. At the April meeting, there was also some questions about ADA ramps. I think over related to the project on 4th and 6th Streets.
That was my point. Those were my questions.
So I thought I'd just give just a quick, how do we determine which ramps we rebuild with a project? And then what kind of projects do and don't require ADA ramps to be put in. So when are ADA ramps required to be rebuilt? So anytime you're doing a modification to the pedestrian crossing, such as adding a pedestrian refuge, so that would require ramps to be rebuilt. Anytime you're doing paving, so if you're adding any thickness to the road surface, either removing and replacing or overlaying a roadway requires that. And so curb to curb paving, building or rebuilding a traffic signal would require new ADA ramps. If you're doing alterations to the curb line adjacent to that ramp, you would need to replace the ADA ramp, and then again, all new construction. So what kind of things don't require ADA ramps to be built? If we're out replacing signs, if we're changing the striping or adding a marked crosswalk, chip sealing, which is a very thin layer of asphalt, as well as fog or slurry sealing, do not require ADA ramps to be replaced. Patching potholes do not require it, or patching a utility trench. So if we just came through and did a utility trench line and replaced that back, that does not require ADA ramps. It's really that curb to curb pavement replacement. And so when we look at a project, we kind of scope out what work we're doing if it's a utility project. So on 4th and 6th, that was utility replacement work. We looked at what's already been rebuilt, what hasn't been rebuilt, kind of where is our project extents going to. And so I think in that case, we did not go out into the full intersection except for a very small part for a utility connection. And the paving of those streets was mostly limited to just before you hit the curb ramps. I think we ended up replacing one curb ramp over there. And I think maybe the question was, why didn't we replace the ones on the other side of Center Street? And so we would pick those up when we do, I think there's another project for a little bit more work in Center Street that we would pick those up with.
Well, my main point is, in general, is that it is dangerous to put people easily into the street with a handicap ramp when you can't get out on the other side of the street, and that when you're dealing with handicap ramps, you need to think intersection, and that you can replace the corner of an intersection on the far side, put in a handicap ramp, and make it safe for people to get out of the street. And if it needs to be altered later, that's not a big deal.
So we're finding that each of these ramps costs between $10,000 to $15,000. So
Moji's point was that, and what was demonstrated to me about 40 years ago, is that if you're in a chair or on a walker and you're trying to get out of the street and somebody's turning around the corner, you're in danger.
So it becomes, it's definitely a discussion topic in the office on many projects of, there comes a point where the ramp costs get extremely expensive. And so it's that balance, right? So if we're doing paving with our PMF program, identifying the ability to, continue to increase the pavement condition index of our system as a whole without spending all of our money replacing ramps. And I know this is a topic that John is passionate about. So I'm going to let John share a little on this as well.
Well, I generally agree that if you've got an intersection that's got no ADA ramps on all four corners, and you fix one of them, and then all of a sudden somebody on a wheelchair cannot, they can get off one ramp but can't get off the other. That does become a problem. In the Center Street location, I think we've just been, our intention is Center Street is the next project, trying to pick project limits that make sense. My recollect is there are ADA ramps. They're just not ADA accessible.
There's no ADA ramps at the corner of the Catholic Church or at their parking lot.
Okay. So,
and there's no guarantee that your project will be built in the next 2 years.
True. I think what we tried to do was stay away from the intersection altogether, but we had one location where we couldn't avoid it. So we went ahead and did that. But the better solution would have been just to not touch that ramp at all and take it all on when we do Center Street. But yeah, I think our challenges is the other challenge we have is for the most part, we're paying for ADA ramp replacements using pavement maintenance fees. And the commitment when we adopted that pavement maintenance fee was asphalt only. So we're trying to stretch those dollars as far as we can, make sure we're making wise investments in those. And, maybe had we, I know there was a different project engineer that was looking at this, I don't remember being part of the discussion about why, but, I think they do take a pretty hard look at fixing all, making sure we're not leaving somebody out in the middle of the street.
Anyway, I just thinking that I may be getting to the point where I might want to use one of those devices to get me around. I'm not getting any younger.
Yeah. And McLaughlin neighborhood is a tough one for that, Henry. They're everywhere.
I agree.
There's a lot of them. So we're trying to fix as many of them as we can. We've been fixing a bunch of them.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I don't, in this case,
Right.
should we?
My point is that it's cheaper to put in a new corner than it is to try to understand why somebody can't get across the street.
Hey, John, has the city looked into, I guess, raising additional money to pay for this? You're right, they're everywhere, and not, trying to meet ADA requirements. It's not possible in some parts of Oregon City, but in lots of places it is. So, have you guys identified how many curb ramps and how long will take the city to bring them in compliance? I know ODOT is feels like tens of thousands of them throughout the state, but what is cities, how many you guys have to fix?
We pair our ADA ramps with our pavement program. So even though that pavement program was committed, I think the people that adopted it were pretty committed to keeping that for pavement. We've, because of the ADA requirements and strict reading of the law on that, we have to take into account if we're, crossing the crosswalk or touching that ADA or touching that corner, we need to take care of the ADA ramp. So usually and I don't know what it looks like this year, but I've kind of lost track because I'm not as deep into the plans as those. But usually we've got somewhere between 20 to 30 of those for every annual pavement project. So we're doing a bunch of them, and we're doing them as we take care of the pavement, because usually it's not just the ramp. If you look at all those, and especially if you look at our old town, a lot of them put a catch basin right where the ramp is at. We've got years and years and years of past construction that's put the stormwater grate right in the corner of the apex of the corner. And so you really got to look at each of those intersections. And for the most part now, when we're in McLaughlin neighborhood, every intersection usually requires some stormwater work to reroute the storm drain and then rebuild, the ADA ramps to match and tie back into whatever was existing there, whether it be curb or sidewalk. So these retrofits are costly.
Painful.
Yeah, they
Well, they're
can be.
difficult and expensive. I just trying to figure out, like, do you guys have 1,000 to fix throughout the city, or what is
Oh.
the?
Yeah, that's another good question. I don't know that number off the top of my head, Senator Mayor, but we're using our internal staff, our inspection staff, to do our ADA ramp inventory. So we're working on that. They're doing it whenever they're not inspecting projects. They're out doing ADA ramp inspections with the smart level and everything else. They're trying to figure out, because even some of our new stuff is like ODOT and every other agency, the interpretation of the ADA rules with regard to slopes, landings, area behind the truncated dome, what color or what does that truncated dome look like? All those different things play into whether or not the ramp is compliant. And we're finding even some of the stuff that we've done more recently isn't quite compliant, but we're trying to get a detailed inventory of that. But we're not just getting inventory. We're getting inventory, and we're replacing everything associated with a pavement maintenance project. So yeah, I think, the idea of, you got 1,000 of these things, take on 500 a year is probably not where we're going to go with it. We're probably more going to try to do as much as we can with that pavement project, because like I said, most of them need stormwater improvements. And by the time we're done paving them, to get the ADA right, you got to make the asphalt match too. And that almost never works if you're just taking on one part element to the project.
Hey, John,
And
is there a requirement that they have to be made of concrete? Can you do part of it in asphalt and then the other wings of it are in concrete, or in a situation where you have a crosswalk and going across the street versus one connecting to the next sidewalk on the other street? Do like the one on the middle picture there, where you're kind of sharing it in the middle to eliminate one of the, for areas that are not high traffic, but use that one there and use it in the corner in the 45, so it can go either go straight or go to the left.
Yeah.
As a cost saving matter, because that way, if they're $5,000 a pop, that's $10,000 for each curve or each corner. You could do both sides of the street for the cost of one, if it does that meet the requirement. Plus asphalt's a lot cheaper than concrete. You're looking at about 1/3 the cost, or maybe 1/4 of the cost.
Well, I think so. City's got a sidewalk standard. We don't have an asphalt path standard for sidewalks. So there is kind of that long-standing standard for using concrete. It's some of the ideas that you talked about. I'm not sure if you meant that, but maybe there's, you do the landing in concrete and then the wings in asphalt or something. I don't see that, or it's definitely not kind of proven out to be an appropriate solution, probably because the different material types just don't last long. But that's not to say that we couldn't have an asphalt path that came to an ADA requirement that was built of asphalt. That's an option. I would say with these retrofits, and by retrofit, I mean they're in an existing neighborhood and you're trying to meet, whether it be the width requirements, clearances from hydrants. Does it have, a lot of these in Oregon City, we've got private retaining walls on the backside. Some of them have planter strips, some of them don't. It's just every one is a custom build. And I know Cheddar is aware of this because he works for a firm that does that, that they do a lot of this kind of work. It's one of those things where we're finding more and more you can spend a bunch in design and try and economize out the most economic, and that's one option. Others have been where they've actually done more of a design build with the contractor trying to manage that, and trying to find flat work contractors that are I just think we're better off to work hard on the design, try and provide as much design detail and construction oversight as we can. And if there's design elements that we can incorporate in that mean less concrete or the less number of ramps, we sure do that. We do. And it's just other situations where that doesn't work.
I mean, between survey design and construction, I mean, they turn to be very expensive. I don't know if there's a right solution. Like, do you have, I mean, you have to have a really good inspector that can work with a contractor if you want to eliminate some of that engineering. I mean, you could go either way.
From having done quite a few of these and doing corner replacements, I will say that you need good, conscientious engineering design, including a gutter profile to make sure you got a drainage around the corner to it. And also you need an inspector and a contractor that both are up for it. And in order to make the asphalt work, you have to cut out about 6 to 8 to 9 inches of old asphalt on the outside, on the street side of the curb, all the way around, and replace it. And that's been my experience replacing corners.
Yeah, that depends. I mean, you think of streets like 8th Street where we have, we've done a lot on 8th Street and there's a lot of steep grades along there. We couldn't have done those without rebuilding the intersection itself, just to make the grades work and keep the drainage right. And I know on 9th Street we've got some that are a little wonky, and that the surface runoff when it really is raining kind of jumps up and over the curb. It'd be different if we on the hilltop, for instance. It's a little better up there. But you get down into the McLaughlin neighborhood, man, there's some real challenges there.
And the transition between McLaughlin and Hilltop.
Yeah. I mean, right. There's lots of steep areas in Oregon City. So.
And to wrap this up a little bit, having quickly scanned through that update for the goal 12 or whatever it is, stuff that Vance sent out last week about the transportation and system upgrades that the state is land use board is going to start requiring in the comp plans. It seems to me that there's going to be a lot more attention having to be paid for things like pedestrian system standalone transportation. That is to say that you need to be able to walk conveniently from point A to point B. And And if you can't, all the various obstacles need to be detailed out, just like you do in your traffic, in your street plans. And so I'm thinking that the more you can get into your inventory of your handicap ramps, and the more you can get ahead of this game, the easier it's going to be to meet those requirements when the comp plan update comes around in 5 or 10 years.
I'm not, well, I don't know what Vance sent out. We're doing a comp plan update right now. I'm not sure what you're referring to, Henry, but
This is the new DLCD is set to adopt this climate friendly communities. Thursday, which is going to require these whole new transportation, requirements, prioritizing pedestrians, public transportation. I mean, they're talking lots, 1,700 square feet in these climate friendly neighborhoods and so on and on. So that's, and then that if that gets passed on Thursday, then the cities like Oregon City will have to adopt those things in their standards and update their transportation plans and so on and on.
we're not that far off from a transportation system plan update. I know we have this other little prioritization project that we need to work on. I thought I wasn't sure if that's what you were talking about, Henry, which was the TSP goals and objectives, but sounds like this is something different. But my point is we're going to have to take that comp plan and a lot of its requirements into consideration when we update the TSP, and that's probably a couple years off because ours was last done in 2012.
Anyways, that's about enough, I think, on this subject. And is there anything else anybody wants to bring up?
I have one more topic, and then just a quick note on this one. We've traditionally done kind of this one ramp in the center, which works well for people with good vision or mobility devices, but people with low vision or no vision struggle with where to cross, which direction to cross the roadway. Not all intersections are 90 degrees, and so we've really started moving toward a standard of the directional crosswalk so that a low vision or no vision user can identify which direction they should cross the street. So that's just one more little piece to the ADA component. And then just briefly, I was asked to give an update on the shuttle.
Well, thank you.
We've been watching our ridership numbers. They're okay. They're not great. And so we're kind of starting to see some patterns. And I think I showed this visual once before. So this is the route. Each of these letters are kind of the primary stops. The stars are kind of secondary stops as well. The stops circled in red are where we see our highest ridership. Currently, this loop takes 90 minutes. And so from a user perspective, that is an extremely long route. So if I got on here at South End and Barker and I rode to the college, that's not a terrible ride. But to get home, I then have to ride either to here and then walk, or ride the whole route. So it becomes extremely long. So currently right now, we have a survey out to those that ride the shuttle. So that's being advertised for the most part on the shuttles. We want to understand the riders that are using it now and what they like and don't like about it. And then in June, we'll be starting a survey for those that do not ride the shuttle, trying to identify why they don't ride it, so that we can use both the ridership numbers, kind of what we think is happening as the city and county staff team that kind of oversees this, and then take those results of the rider and non-rider surveys with the hope that we'll come out of it with a a modification to the route that meets everyone's needs and helps us grow our ridership. So that's kind of where we're at.
Dana? I was looking at the map and you got 3 stops that are not identified. They're the stars. And do you have any, can you quickly identify where those are? Because they seem to have a high percentage of users. They're also the ones that are red circled. There's one that's just after City Hall, one up on Myers Road, and one that looks like it's Winco.
Yeah, I think we've got Winco here. Ray might be able to help me a little more. This is through a residential neighborhood. So this is on
Could that be-
Myers.
Could
This
that
must
be
Gaffney?
Could that be the one at Gaffney?
Yeah,
Who's
so
Gaffney?
we see the high ridership there. And then this one here, which,
Oh, that's halfway up Lynn Avenue. That's got to be at Electric Street.
yeah. And so what we really see when we look at this is we don't see a lot of ridership up here. We do see at just the one stop, this area does have a TriMet service. And the TriMet service runs hourly and our shuttle runs every 90 minutes.
Mhm.
And so we think folks that don't want to wait for the TriMet bus are hopping on our free service. So the TriMet service has a fee. Our shuttle service does not. And so we think they're utilizing that to get down to the transit center and then on to their final destination. If we remove this loop, we save about 30 minutes on our route, and we could drop it down to about an hour.
Am I
So
correct? Reasons why the N area that with that Jefferson and that loop there is because of the low income neighborhood, I believe.
yes,
The reason why it is focused in that area. Okay. I'm just surprised there's not much ridership because it's not red circle, but it was a focus area.
yeah, and so that's why we're looking to get rider feedback. Because as you can see, we've got high ridership kind of in all these areas, and there's not a good section to remove. We did have some discussions about, do we pull off of kind of this main line of Malala because they have transit service and we run a back and forth kind of on this outer edge. None of them are great options, but what our goal is to increase the ridership on the shuttle. So we're going to collect survey results, compare that with what we think would help, and then ultimately come out with a route modification, probably late summer, maybe early fall.
On a long-term basis, would it be a reasonable suggestion to think that you took maybe a second shuttle and went in reverse on that lower loop only?
On this loop down here?
Yeah, we're going, yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, and I think those are all kind of the pieces, understanding, is there ridership somewhere that we're not picking up? We've heard a little bit of feedback from the neighborhood kind of down by Glen Oak that they don't get any service. We can't serve everyone or we'd be on a 2+ hour loop. And then at that point, who wants to ride the shuttle for 2 hours, even if it is free? So.
Well, from just a glance, it looks like the only thing that's left out of the shuttle right now, that's a potential, would be the high school. So maybe after that area out there across the street from the high school develops more, maybe that'll be a future.
Yeah,
Oh,
and the TriMet reroute now runs down Beaver
I was
Creek
going to say that. Yeah.
and to the high school. And so really
Yeah.
the goal is to use this shuttle for those that don't have access to transit currently.
Mhm.
So we've been looking at that. I've been working closely with TriMet. We've added the stops at the high school. There's plans to add stops on Beaver Creek as we see development occurring up near the affordable housing project off Maple Lane. We've been looking at moving and adjusting and creating the stops that would help support that development, as well as there's a new project going in on Beaver Creek Road at the signal at Claremont, kind of the back entrance to the college. We've been coordinating getting a set of stops that would serve that development. And then again, there's stops kind of down by the high school that could support the new apartments going in as well. So work pretty closely with TriMet on adding stops and adjusting stops to serve new projects.
Good. Now then, is there anything else? Anybody want to say anything besides me? We stand adjourned. Thank you all.
You're welcome. Thank you.